Fridays are still work from home. We're kind of still holding on to that 1 day a week.
Even working from home, you're getting all dressed up with that shirt.
Dude, I'm getting dressed up just for you, Joe. Just for you and our beautiful audience. It's just about showing respect. People, I think,
That's
have
right.
lost that. People used to think about it as an expression of yourself. And then they said, oh, I should be able to express myself however I want. No, it's just a show of respect for the other person. It's not about you. This generation has gotten too selfish, Joe. Everyone's thinking about themselves. And like, if you're going to get dressed up, might as
Totally
well,
agree.
go all the way. Try to look good.
That is something that's really annoying nowadays. Something happened in our lifetimes where it just became okay, even like the norm or accepted now, to just kind of dress like a slob.
You know what? Joe, you're right. Give me a second.
That money brings just a little filthy lucre, buys a lot of things, and I could take you to places that you would like to go. But outside of that, I've no use for dough. It's the root of all evil of strife.
All right, now we're ready. Welcome back.
All right, Joe, what do you got for us?
So, Luke, over the past week, we've gotten kind of a strange mix of different signals. So, on one hand, economic data, the fundamentals, they look fine. They look pretty okay, actually. Inflation isn't reaccelerating. The labor market isn't crashing. Consumers are still spending. But at the same time, there's a lot of political noise brewing around the affordability crisis. That's the new term that's been thrown around, the past week or two now. And the focus on this has really gone into overdrive over the past week. On top of all that, there's drama, again, related to the Fed, where just earlier this week, the Department of Justice subpoenaed the Fed over its building renovation costs. So this is something that was one of the drama points last summer.
So we're taking a look, and it looks like it's about 3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
Yeah, it just came out.
It seems to have died, but it came up again for some reason, and it was brought to a new level this week. Real action was taken. In the background of all that, Trump has been dropping a big barrage of different proposals in his preferred way. He just goes out and tweets random things, and it's difficult to interpret them. Are they just him saying things again? Are they just gimmicks? So today I want to do three things. First, we'll start with a quick reality check on what the data is actually saying right now. Second, then we'll talk about this reignited political pressure on the Fed and why that's happening. And third, and I think this is really the most important thing we'll talk about, one of these affordability proposals that markets initially laughed off, but now all of a sudden banks are starting to take very seriously. Whenever something like that happens, typically means something real is going on.
Which one? Of the three that you mentioned, which one?
Credit card interest rate caps. Which is kind of funny because
cool.
This is the one that I think people reacted most strongly to at the start.
In support?
A lot of people do not like it, but there is this cohort that actually has gotten behind it. Before we get into that, though, we'll just quickly give a quick overview of what recent economic data has actually been saying. So with the assumption that if we have this affordability crisis, people are calling it, things must be collapsing. Things must be looking pretty dire right now. But it's just really not what we're seeing in the data. All right, so over the past week, we got major data prints related to inflation, the labor market, and consumer spending, the main driver behind economic growth in the US. We look at this one all the time now. Here's our December CPI. So if you recall, last month, whenever we looked at this, 1 month was skipped altogether from the government shutdown. They later released the November report partially, but on a year-over-year basis, here's what things look like. So we've got that October gap. And whenever we talked about this, there was significant skepticism around that pretty sizable drop we're seeing here.
The reason why there were 2 gaps before, because that's just month over month. And they weren't going to do like a 2-month thing. I guess they just didn't do October. So if they get like a November number, they don't have an October one. They can't do month over month, but they have November and now December, and they can do another month over month. Man, that's going to be one of those things. It's going to be like an historical asterisk for all of eternity now.
That's it. Yeah, we've got this note
economics students. Mm-hmm. They're going to be like, oh, freaking politics.
We'll never know. October 2025.
Holes in my data. We lived it, man. We were there. Tell our kids.
The real takeaway here was this extreme level of skepticism that both the core and the headline number from September to November dropped both from 3% to 2.6 and 2.7%. People thought that there was just missing data, and given the next month, it was going to kind of accelerate again and, fill in this missing data. But whenever they did that, it just really didn't show that acceleration that everyone was expecting pretty unanimously. So to me, that's a pretty strong signal that inflation is pretty under control. Now, it's still above the Fed's target, but it's certainly not in what I would call crisis territory. So we got the non-farm payrolls for December. And if we look here, the monthly job growth here on the right, the number's not really great. It was just around 50,000. So we're still kind of declining, but we're not seeing net job losses. So it's okay. It's not great, but the labor market's certainly not collapsing. Finally, we got November retail sales as well. And it was pretty strong. In fact, this consumer spending number, this is what I would call a pretty strong economy.
And this is adjusted for seasonal variation. So I thought originally that like November or December come around, people always spend more. I know my credit card bill, for instance, went up a lot for the December period at least. But this, it says, is seasonally adjusted. So hard to poke a hole into that. Okay.
So given all that, despite a lot of discourse talking about this crisis going on, the underlying macro fundamentals, they're still pretty solid. And that's just puts us in kind of a weird spot, I think, because all of these other things that we're going to talk about next, they're all happening despite that. A lot of this is being driven by politics. One of the other big headline events this week was also very political, in that the Fed received a subpoena from the DOJ just over a week ago now, actually on a Sunday night, shortly after Powell released a statement and actually a video issuing a very stern and kind of unusually direct response to this.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was a little surprised to see that kind of come across my feed. It was not just a statement. He got up and recorded it and stuck it up next to his statement.
On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. That testimony concerned in part a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings. I have deep respect for the rule of law and for accountability in our democracy. No one, certainly not the chair of the Federal Reserve, is above the law. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role. The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. Those are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. I have served at the Federal Reserve under 4 administrations, Republicans and Democrats alike. In every case, I have carried out my duties without political fear or favor, focused solely on our mandate of price stability and maximum employment. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people. Thank you.
Pretty stern, very, very direct. I would say certainly so for an institution that prides itself on talking all the time, but not really saying anything.
Yeah. I mean, he called it out. He just said it's a pretext.
It's a strong move. So there's nothing from the DOJ itself on this. This news hit the world from that statement that Powell.
Mm-hmm. That's actually kind of interesting. Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that it wasn't public before they came out. It basically came out ahead of it. I mean, whoever the strategists are over there
exactly.
at the Fed, they were just like, let's get ahead of this as soon as possible and just make a statement. This, you said it was filed on like a Sunday or something? Or no, you said the
Sunday
video
night,
came out on a Sunday night. Yeah. I got nothing. Yeah. I generally agree with him. I mean, that was when I saw that was my first reaction. These things are pretexts. Maybe there's something really there or something, but the fact that they're making so maybe the Trump administration is making so much noise and has been just since the summer about the renovations and all that, and him like going there and putting a little hard hat on and like walking. Yeah, it feels, political. So, and this just feels like a continuation.
It just feels like nonsense. Yeah. Just like grasping at straws. I think this one's really weird just because Trump really didn't talk about it after the fact. If this was all him, if he was really behind it, he would have announced it first. It's like he would have made a big show. Like he probably would have done a press conference.
You think?
About it as well.
You think? Like what proportion? It can't be 100%.
So.
You think 100% of stuff that he does, he writes about on Twitter or X or Truth Social or whatever? Is it 100%? It can't be 100%. It's got to be some number.
Things that are meant to be public. And I mean, like this is obviously a really high impact thing. I think for those, it's near 100% that he really, jumps on it, whether he's posted about it a lot, whether he does an in-person thing, something televised. It's, he's Trump. He's a reality TV host, at
I don't know, man. I wonder, like, if you go throughout a day, just ask the theoretical question: is throughout a day, how many big decisions is he making in a day? Do you think 100? And then of those, how many is he tweeting about, Xing about?
Yeah, point taken. But I would think that, but this one is such high impact. I think this one is like.
It's a weird move because he's going to be out in just a couple months anyway. That's kind of that's the weirdest part. I just don't understand the pressure now. It's like, how many more meetings really are we going to have before he's gone in May? Seriously, how many? 3?
Right.
What are we talking about? What's he hoping to gain at Trump? What's Trump trying to gain? Like an extra 25 basis points off or something? I don't know. From that angle, it's also really weird. I mean, just wait it out. Why do this? Maybe there really is something there. Maybe this is lawyer driven. Maybe there are some other names who want to, one of the things it's like ambitious people, when you become a certain size, once your name is known well enough, I think you just become a target for other ambitious people. I think that's part of how we ambition checks ambition. And, Jerome Powell, he's a household name, certainly in my world. And then if a lawyer can take him down, maybe somebody somewhere actually in the DOJ actually feels like they have something here. They have a real case. And maybe there's something really here. Because the political calculation doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It follows a pattern, absolutely. But he's almost out the door. I don't know, man. The only reason why we're talking about this is because the Fed, and we cover the Fed very, very closely.
I think it's also connected to this broader theme of this. Politics have been so loud over the past week. So Trump has been talking about this affordability crisis and kind of seemingly throwing stuff at the wall in terms of policies to address that. Separately, you've got the DOJ targeting targeting and actually doing something now directly to the Fed. I think these are all things just to try to curry favor with the public a little bit. The public in general, I think, is not a huge fan of the Fed in general. I think, at least in recent years, it's associated with inflation. It's kind of an easy target. And that kind of leads into the next point about this affordability stuff. So while the DOJ was putting this stuff together, apparently, Trump is out there tweeting about all of these policy proposals that presumably should address the affordability crisis. But I think most of them, they're mostly just gimmicks. Again, similar to this, the Fed being called out, I don't really think there's anything there. It seems like posturing. I think that's the overlap with these other policy proposals that came out. So you mentioned earlier, it's like, what does Trump have to gain by doing this, by calling out the Fed? And it's kind of ironic, actually. This might end up backfiring on him, because we also mentioned recently the weird position that Powell's in that his term as Fed chair is up this May, but his term as on the board of governors isn't up until 2028. So this might, if Powell was considering staying on, so if previously Powell was just kind of considering this way or that, maybe staying on the board after his chairmanship is over, this might be something that kind of pushes him to, you know what, I'm staying now. I think the institution is under attack and just in too great a risk right now. He could have the incentive now to stick around and try to make sure, try to protect that slowly encroaching political influence.
I'm thinking about this a little more now. I got a couple things. So first off, if this is entirely politically, motivated, maybe this isn't from like the Trump side. Maybe it's from the other side. I mean, I imagine, look, the Federal Reserve is going to have a bunch of lawyers, and they're going to be working on cases all the time. I'm sure they field this stuff, every day. They got plenty of probably full-time lawyers. And being issued a subpoena is just they're just gathering evidence. They're probably issued subpoenas all the time. You don't think so? Like, what do you think? How many are we talking about here? But the fact that this was put out in front of everyone,
I don't know.
Maybe this was more of a move to make Trump look like a bully as opposed to anything like out of the ordinary. That's one thing.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't.
Maybe
think
this
about
is
it that way.
Maybe this really just it is the total nothing burger, but really the Fed wants to make it a something burger.
That's a good point.
And it definitely looks like, and we are certainly about to fall into the narrative that we were primed and ready to receive and accept that statement that this is but I'd be curious, how many subpoenas did the DOJ issue to the Fed over the years, and for what? And it doesn't even have to be the Department of Justice. It could be any court, really. But
yeah,
I kind of got into this. I know that the Fed has some really good lawyers because of that. There was a book that came out like a long time back when I was still there, I think. But these court stuff is all public. Like, you can get the court documents for some of the other cases, like against and for the Fed and stuff. And any sort of big institution is going to be fielding this stuff all the time.
But I mean, even to me, it just doesn't seem like something the Fed would want to do, because I think that in itself is a overtly political statement. And that's the number one thing that highlighted.
Sorry, what is an overtly
subpoenaed if it didn't need to be highlighted? Like if you're saying the assumption is maybe the Fed gets many of these all the time and they just don't see the light of day because there's really nothing there or something like that, it's a political statement to choose to highlight it on a Sunday night.
But that doesn't speak anything to how rare they are, or even if this is critical or important. I don't know. I'm just saying it's another interpretation.
That's true, but again,
they might be playing offense with this, is what I'm saying.
Right. And that was my point, that's, that's that's an overtly political style of offense to be playing. And that's the number one thing that the Fed does not want to do.
It's weird. It's strange. And maybe that's enough of a reason. I mean, we're starting to get into, this is a midterm year. Things are going to get weird. Okay. Things are going to get weird. Yeah. Things are starting to get weird. We have to parse through, like, yeah, you're right. Okay. So that's a great transition to the next thing you wanted to talk about, which is like just throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and seeing which one of these policies can smell like they will address the affordability crisis enough to maybe win votes or something at the end of the year. But like, as we, again, who try to focus more on the, monetary, economic, financial side of things, it's going to be a little difficult, I think, this year to do so because there's going to be so much political noise. So we'll try to navigate it. But anyway, let's right. Tell me about some of the policies that are being proposed. And you wanted to dig into the credit card one, which is good because I put some thought into this one too. Because this starts to touch upon my world also. And talk about, one of the affordability things is just to get rid of the institutional investors. You have to stop buying up homes. That one's you're talking about. And we talked about that one in some depth before the proposal even came out. This just had to do with just generally being interested in the housing market. And we went and broke down how fragmented it was and made some of the points that showed up on the news a little later. Yes, I'm patting myself on the back. I think we can do that, right? Think we can do that sometimes?
I think so. Okay. I think it's well earned, Luke. Like you said, you called it out before any of this even happened. So one of the three was that he wanted to restrict institutional buyers from buying single-family homes. That's become, something that somewhat of a punching bag that people talk about. BlackRock's buying up all the homes in the country, something like that. But we looked into it, and I don't know, I forgot what the number was, but what was it, Luke? Like at least a small fraction of 1% of homes were bought by institutional investors in the past 20 years or something like that. And a lot of it was done in response to the financial crisis.
Yeah, that was a really interesting episode, I thought. I'm glad I did it. I mean, I got to research like the housing market and what it actually kind of looks like. And a couple things that stand out. One is like the main thesis of that episode was, the majority of Americans don't actually want housing pricing to go down because they're the homeowners. Like 65%, something like that, people actually own their homes. And so the 35% rent. And then of those that rent, the vast majority are renting it from much smaller, mom and pop shops that maybe have like one place to rent, 1 to 10 places to rent. The ones that have like thousands and thousands are few and far between. And it came out because of this, really interesting kind of the 2008 government stood up some programs to try to stabilize the housing market. They needed to sell these things en masse. And that is when it started to become interesting to really big institutional investors. Institutional investors had known for quite a while that, the housing market and like an apartment building is a great investment. It's got a great return. But the problem is it's just not worth it because it's so small of an investment. They're used to doing like, hundreds of millions of something at a time. But if you wanted to get like an apartment building, we're talking the tens of thousands, maybe 1 million or something. And certainly single family homes. Scale. You just, the scale doesn't work. But after this program came out in the government, they were selling these things en masse. And there's just this really interesting dynamic. So like Georgia is a fantastic example that just because they sold them like every Tuesday or something, or like once a month on a Tuesday, bankers could just literally fly in and spend millions and millions of dollars and just go back. You could actually do it at scale. And then they ended up, having like 1 or 2% of the whole housing market. So saying that they can't buy is probably not going to make a dent. If you wanted to make a dent, you would say no one can own like a separate home or no one can rent. But that would materially move the needle, I think. But then that also means you're getting rid of a very important product, which is to rent. I mean, I wanted to rent at one point when I was young. I didn't want to buy a house. I wanted to be able to just get up and move. So I don't know if it makes sense to just, make it completely economically unviable to live to rent if you wanted to go down that path.
Right.
And then in that episode, we talked about all that in more depth in the episode, but then I think the final conclusion is like, well, everything that they were trying to do, that another like affordability idea with the 50-year mortgage, and that got like totally panned. Here's some more affordability ideas. They ultimately, all this stuff is like demand side policies, which are dumb because the problem is, and everyone knows, is a supply thing. It's a supply thing. So that was as a summary of that episode, but.
Yeah, with the same critique on the second one is that Trump directed the housing agencies to buy up 100 billion. There's 100 or 200, some sizable chunk of mortgage bonds. Unclear the direct link between lowering housing costs with that. If anything, it would, kind of increase housing prices. It's difficult to see that clear linkage between having the agencies, Fannie and Freddie, do that and seeing more affordable housing. You can argue about what it can or can't do, but I think from the previous one, we already kind of identified that the issue is not on the demand side. Everything, the biggest fix to this would be to increase the supply, and this kind of proposal doesn't touch the supply side at all. So it's just feels like something else. He's just kind of anything to curry some political favor.
Yeah, the appearance of doing something. What do you want?
Exactly. So those were the first two. I think it seems pretty clear that they're probably really not going to do anything. They're both related to housing, and I think it's pretty well established that the housing market would benefit the most in terms of affordability with supply side policies. Neither of these things address the supply side, so they just seem pretty gimmicky overall. On to the third one, though. His proposal was to cap interest rates on credit cards at 10%. So this was really the most interesting one to me. So similar to the first two, people just kind of didn't take it seriously. This is crazy. This would never work. This would be very harmful to them. So, consumer credit cards, interest rates typically between 20 and 30% or so. So cutting that down to 10% would materially impact the business model. So on the first day, no one really seemed to say much about it. Everyone just thought, okay, this is another thing he's throwing at the wall. It's probably not going to work. Let's just move on. Then something strange happens over the coming days. So some of the biggest banks, including Citi and JP Morgan, as the week went on, they started making serious statements about this proposal, just completely condemning it. But they were very measured in their responses, in that they always started with something along the lines of, affordability is the most important thing. We absolutely agree with and support measures to, help the affordability crisis in America, but not this one, pretty much. So it's like they tried to get on board with it, with the underlying, it's, play the politics game. But the underlying was that this would be pretty disastrous to, large chunks of their business models. So they did their best to emphasize that this really wouldn't help affordability at all, actually.
And like the funniest thing. So I saw this, and I kind of started. I wanted to research it a little bit myself, and doing that research, I actually saw that there was a proposal or a bill that was introduced into Congress last year, February 2025, that basically was the exact same thing, 10% cap on credit cards, introduced by none other than somebody named Bernard Sanders. Ever heard of him? So I can't tell. Like I saw that and I was like, wait a minute. Okay, we're playing some like 4D chess here. Maybe this really is just
Talk
like
about political noise.
Hey, Bernie, I took your idea. I'm proposing it. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't help but like laugh when I saw that. Okay, Trump's taking Bernie Sanders' ideas, and now he's basically saying, "I dare you to like fight this. Go ahead and fight me on this." Because it's like you can go to Congress.gov and find this thing. It was like introduced by Bernard Sanders. It didn't even make it, I think, through or something, whatever committee it had to get like voted on in the Senate. That's all it does. But yeah, so that made me laugh. So that's like the first thing we need to acknowledge here. Okay, this is not a new idea. It's Bernie Sanders' idea. And I think it is important to mention like what the actual business model is for credit cards, because I think it's kind of interesting. It's split between interest and fees. And if a bank issues a credit card, so like I've got Chase, and that's powered by Visa. And when I go and make a transaction, there's a bunch of fees. Now the biggest fee goes to Chase, and that's per every transaction. And it might even just be like 1% or like 2%. It's like a lot. To me, frankly, credit card, there's got to be a good reason why everyone's pushing credit cards on you. It feels like anytime you go to a retail, they're like, "Hey, you want a credit card to pay for this?" You're trying to push a credit card on you. And there's got to be a good reason. It's just a great business. So there's the fee that gets pocketed by Chase. And then there's a separate thing called like an interchange fee, and that goes to Visa. And that's going to be some smaller percent. And then I think even there's a separate fee that goes to like some software thing on the merchant side or something. I'm not totally clear on that. But those are the fees. Now, after the actual balance, you and I don't know about you, but speaking for myself, it's like I just have it set on auto pay. So I just pay it off every month. So it doesn't earn any interest. But like, because there's no way I'm going to be paying 25% or something on anything if I can absolutely avoid it. So I just have it set up on auto pay to pay the statement every month, and that's fine. So there's kind of a question going on here. Well, it's like what proportion of the balance on a bank's credit card line is actually generating interest? And the estimates is something like 30 to 50% is actually generating interest. So if you have like a credit card, if you're a bank and you have a credit card out there that's 20% APR, but only half of that's actually generating interest, that balance is generating a yield for the bank at like 10%, which is still very good. Like that's good for a bank.
Right.
So now if you want to take this a step further, and by the way, that 20% number isn't just out of nowhere. It's like a prime rate plus thing. So, banks kind of have this prime rate, which is just they use as a reference for some of their products. And they just say it's that prime rate plus some number. And that's how much we can give you this loan for. And that prime rate is almost always tied 1-to-1 with whatever the Fed funds rate is. They actually track like kind of what the average credit card percentage is. And it just follows the same path as the Fed funds rate. So like back when it was in like the teens, back when the federal funds rate was at 0, these numbers were at like the low teens for a credit card. But then now it's at like 20. It got jacked up because rates went up. So if you slide in and you go Trump and say, okay, well now they're capped at 10%. Now, all else being equal, if only half of those balances are actually earning any interest, so now that same balance is only earning like 5%. I mean, that's less than like most secured loans. I could put this in something of risky. It's an unsecured loan to a consumer, which is, there's no collateral. Or I can, put it into a mortgage or some other C&I or like almost anything else that's much safer and get a better return. It's nuts. It's just not economically viable anymore for a bank. Yeah, the risk is not commensurate with the yield. It's not worth it. You need to earn more on that. So it's also this kind of, so it's like if
the business model just wouldn't work anymore.
Yeah, this is just like fundamental banking. Banks put a price on risk and it's just not worth it. So, so what does that mean? If like a bank wanted to continue using credit cards, they would have to find some other way to be compensated for that same risk. So like, what are they going to do? Some things they could say is, we're just going to jack up fees. So like maybe credit card now have to have like an annual fee. Some like high, some of these credit cards that are offered, you have to pay like $250 a year. Maybe that's just going to be like a normal thing. Maybe, transaction fees need to be jacked up. Although, it's not as though merchants, that would put the onus on the merchants, and hopefully that would make it economical for the banks. One of the things I thought of that would be kind of interesting would be like, instead of it starting to earn interest after the 30 days, what if it just started earning interest the moment you pay for something? That would be like a normal loan. They're not going to give you like 30 days to pay, at 0%. They're going to say, we're going to start charging you interest the moment you make the transaction. That would now put that entire balance back at 10%, and that would be worth it for a bank. Now, obviously, you and I are going to turn around and say, well, I'm never using my credit card.
Using credit cards.
Okay. I'd start using a debit card. But that is another thing they could do. So, that is some.
I think that's really the point here. Is that at first, banks just came out saying, this can't happen. But as time went on, people are starting to consider it a little more seriously now. It's like, it's not that it's going to destroy credit. It's going to change the structure and the way in which credit is extended. We don't know what that looks like yet, but, times change, regulations change, markets have to adapt, businesses have to adapt. Trump has a way of doing things, very erratically and without any notice, but it doesn't matter. You have to adapt no matter what. And as the week went on, we both saw banks start to become more serious about it, like we said. Then also some different players within the lending business started to kind of fall in line. There's this smaller credit card company that I actually wasn't really familiar with before this, but it's called Bilt. I don't know if you've heard of this before, but it's this credit card company. And this week, just days after the proposal, they came out with an announcement saying, here's our new card offerings with interest capped at 10%. Similarly, the CEO of Klarna, that direct consumer lending, buy now, pay later program that, on consumer retail sites, pretty common. If you choose to buy some, like whenever you check out, there's the option to pay over installments. He came out and said the same thing pretty much, like that he supports this 10% cap. And he even went further at one point, I think, and said that he would even support a 0% cap. Again, surprise, surprise, that's because that's what his business does. So he's all for it. So we're already seeing this bifurcation of the market here, where the establishment players, the big banks, the credit card, those that offer the majority of consumer credit, that they depend on that 20, 30% rate. And then you've got the newer players, the, direct consumer loans, private credit, these newer non-traditional bank credit lenders. They're ready to fill the hole. If this does happen and it does mess up the bank's business models, which it almost certainly will, that doesn't mean there won't be consumer credit anymore. It's just going to change the structure in which this lending happens.
Yeah, right. That's a really good point, because one of the things I thought you would ask would be like, is this a good idea? And then my response would just be like, well, for what, to achieve what goal? If it's like, better question would be like, do the banks like this or not? I would say they probably don't. But are there other competitors to banks? Yeah. Are there other competitors to banks that would like it? And so part of it is like these weird like installment loan things that are popping up that I can, like a pizza. I think I like tried to order a pizza, and they were going to offer me like pay it in 4 installments of like $5 or something. Like,
yeah.
There you go. That's credit.
That's credit.
That's credit. That's basically a credit card in a way. And if you make the sale, you're happy to take like 0%. Even like cars or something. I think like the Nissan Pathfinder. I just kind of like to look at this stuff. I think the Nissan Pathfinder, you can get financing for 0%. I don't know how they do that. Maybe they just decided that they'll like eat whatever that cost is over that time, because it's more important just to sell you a car than it is to like earn interest. So there you go. It's more important to make the sale than it is to earn money off of whatever the installment is. So you can do the 0% even. So that's one thing. The other thing is like, it would probably be a good thing for competitors to credit cards, so payments. And this is going back to like stable coins or anything that has kind of the crypto era or whatever. They would probably love it. They want to kill the crypto business, the credit card business. So is it a good idea? I don't know. It depends what your goal is.
Yeah, from the business perspective, yeah, it's very nuanced. But from the other side, from the political perspective, this actually looks like a pretty good idea. Again, scoring political points, this is something that, like you said, Bernard Sanders came up with. I think this is something that's very easy to understand, and people both sides of the aisle can kind of instantly support it. Nobody wants to. This is just a pure cost that's being lowered. It's either you pay a lot for it or you pay nothing. So the people that are paying those interest rates, they're getting their costs lowered. People like you and I mean, we're not seeing any effect, so it's not really going to matter as much.
It might kind of suck. This is kind of another weird point, is the fact that the reason why this business model works and the reason why I have a credit card and I use it and that banks are willing to offer me this service is because there are people who are not paying their balance on time. Sort of this weird thing where, like, if those people didn't exist for me, I probably wouldn't have the credit card as I know it today, which is kind of a bummer.
And that's one of the points that Klarna CEO made. Yeah, he's like, he said something like, the credit cards are a scam anyway because it's a transfer of wealth from those that are paying off, the full balance every month, and you get points and rewards, whatever, versus those that are not, and then paying, really high interest rates.
That's an interesting point. That's true. I get rewards. I mean, I use the Amazon. I don't know how this one works, but I use the Amazon Prime
airline miles.
My wife loves it. Yeah, and you're right. It's the reason why it works. That's interesting. You're giving it from people who don't cover their balance every month, and you're transferring it over to people who do. And I got to say, yeah, getting hit with like 20, I accidentally, it's like I had like a Lowe's credit card. So you get 5% off.
Yeah.
And they don't have an option, like it's the most annoying thing, but they don't have an option to select like an auto pay, or they didn't at one time. They do now, but they didn't at one time, and I forgot to pay it, and I got hit with like 20% interest. It was a small balance because I don't go to Lowe's a whole lot, but like it sucked. You're like, oh man, it's just a punch right in the gut to have to pay 20% interest, even so.
That same thing happened to me once. I missed it by like a few hours once, and I got charged this fee and some interest, and then I chatted with them. I'm like, listen, you need to just not do that. You need to refund me. This is absurd. I'm not paying this.
You fought them,
and they fought me and said, you know what, I'm canceling this right now. They're like, oh, are you sure?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. See ya.
I want to cancel. There's a couple cards I want to cancel. But I remember trying to go down and they just wouldn't fucking let me cancel.
American Express, for example, this happened once before. The guy on the phone, and I forget exactly how he said it, but he kind of said something indirectly saying like, oh, why don't you just ask us to waive the fee? And then I was like, can you just waive this one? And he goes, oh yeah, that's totally fine. I just can't tell you to ask us to do that. But yeah, I can totally do that.
Reminds me of that scene from The Incredibles. Remember when he's working in the insurance company?
Denied? You're denying my claim? Oh, I don't understand. I have full coverage.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Hoganson, but our liability is spelled out in paragraph 17. All right, listen closely. I'd like to help you, but I can't. I'd like to tell you to take a copy of your policy to Norma Wilcox, WILCOX on the 3rd floor, but I can't. I also do not advise you to fill out and file a WS-2475 form with our legal department on the 2nd floor. I would not expect someone to get back to you quickly to resolve the matter. I'd like to help, but there's nothing I can do.
Yeah, that's kind of what this is. Oh my God. Yeah. American Express and Discover are sort of interesting because they are both the bank and the credit card company. So they collect both those fees. And then they also take the credit risk and they keep it on their own balance sheet. So just FYI. That's why that would make American Express and Discover different. You know, Visa and MasterCard, they don't take any credit risk. It's all at the banks. I am wondering about the stable coins and just generally this move away, like this venture into the credit card business and like the payments business, which I think is inefficient, is probably going to get ironed out.
Yeah, and you know what? These might be the early days. You know, like this, like we might look back now in a few years that, you know, this is one of the things that set it all off. We might have capped credit cards coming very soon.
And then, yeah, shortly after that, I won't be able to have a credit card. They'll like change something. They probably won't get rid of it altogether. They'll change something. They'll like jack a fees on and I'll like have to cancel it. People who actually that 30, 50, that like 30% or the 50% of people that actually like that actually don't pay off it every month and is actually generating interest for the bank, they'll keep the credit card. The banks want those people. But for people like me, pay it off, they want to get rid of me because I'm just, yeah, I'm not yeah, you're right. I'm just kind of a leech
extracting value
to the bank. I'm not giving him any yield for that balance. I'm, you know, draining their.
Well, you are giving them a steady fee stream, which is why it works.
That's true. It's not me. The merchants. Not me. The merchants. Wait, the merchants. The merchants are giving him a steady stream. Yeah, if I had to pay a fee.
And you know what? Maybe that's one of the costs that, you know, comes back to the consumer.
I mean, there are like surcharge fees. I think merchants can charge surcharge fees if you use a credit card. And then oftentimes they don't even accept certain credit cards. I guess American Express is like especially bad about this. A lot of places do not accept American Express.
I think I've been seeing this more
like,
recently,
you know,
actually. Like there's a 7-Eleven like next to my apartment building, and there's two price labels on like most items in the store now. It's cash price and credit price. And the credit price is like 10 or 15% more. Like it's a lot.
Wow.
But they just sell really small items. So like milk is like, you know, you can buy a gallon of milk for, you know, $5.49 or something cash, but it's like $6 for credit. And it's like I'm not going to take out $10 to pay for that milk. It's like, all right, I'm just going to take that, you know, 10% upcharge.
To be sure, like I am extremely sympathetic to merchants. That would drive me crazy. I think I like looked at this. The credit card bill by like Walmart must be in the billions of dollars every year. I think they're paying credit card bills. That is insane. They can't wait to get out of this. You know, run by some people, and they did not accept credit cards. I think that's pretty common. And you think it's like, oh, maybe they're trying to avoid taxes or something. They're probably trying to avoid this hassle with the fees as well. But their kids came in, so they like left, they retired, and then their kids took over the farm, and they accept credit cards now. And I gotta say, I'll probably go there more often because it really is like I literally have gone over there and written like a $25 check because I don't really have cash. Like $25 check for like apples and a pie. Anyway, point is they did not accept credit cards for a long time. And now they do because their kids took it over. And I'll probably go there more often.
Yeah, and you know, pretty soon they might not anymore here because fees might get too high. Banks might stop issuing credit cards. Who knows? You might be paying for that pie and 4 easy payments through Klarna.
Yeah, at 0%. Maybe it's going to change the way that we pay for stuff.
It would still be a net negative for a lot of people because now it's okay. You don't have to pay for the credit directly, but you're not getting the benefit anymore either. So we'll see. You know, it's
some app in your phone that just brings us all together and just makes you do like one transfer payment in there every month, and then it sends it out. You know, there you go. There's an app idea. Come here for an app idea. The Root of All Evil podcast. Do you know what I'm talking about? Basically, if like every store had these installment things,
sounds like a credit card.
You go and you like tap. No, so every store has like that installment idea, right? So you got store A, B, C, D. They all have separate installments. but they're all like use the same app so that you can amalgamate them into like one location on your phone, one app that shows like the total amount that you need to pay to cover all of those installments. You make one transfer into it from your bank, say every month. You can even do it automatically, and it just disperses those payments. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and
so basically,
I
instead
think
of
it's
what it is
exactly a
right
credit
now,
card.
when you swipe a credit card, it's not exactly a credit card, because like in the credit card example, you've got one entity that's issuing you credit to those vendors. Now the vendors are issuing you credit. So instead of one creditor, Chase, you've got 100, all the vendors. And I'm just saying you have an app that just transfers, one transfer payment into your app, and then it just gets sent out to those 100 creditors automatically. We'll call it a root of all evil app. It's going to act the same, yes, but it's going to be very different.
That's like the role that the bank plays today.
I think you see what I'm saying. It's the difference between one creditor and 100.
Yeah. It's
that's the main difference.
It changes who's issuing the credit.
Functionally, it's basically the same.
Now, I would imagine, I could see over time though that someone builds that app. At first, it's just a utility to coordinate payments, and then someone comes along and say, you know what, I can actually offer all the credit too through my app, and then we're kind of back to where we started.
Then okay, fine. Well, okay.
Yeah. So I guess I was taking that
you
extra
took another step. You didn't tell us. Oh,
things might change. They might end right back up here, though. We'll see.
Well, anyway, it's an interesting thought experiment.
Well, that's everything I've got for us today here. So, if I had to summarize this episode, economic data looks okay, but the politics, okay, is not good enough. So we're seeing all these affordability things. We're probably going to see more of them. This credit card cap one, it really stands out. It's not because it's the best proposal there is, but because people are taking it seriously. And I think whenever institutions panic like this, that's the key that tells you, okay, this thing's real. And that's what we're going to be watching here on the Root of All Evil podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joe.
I'm Luke.
We'll see you next time.
See you next week.